Once again, the walls of the royal world are shaking. Prince Andrew, once celebrated as the Duke of York, the Queen's beloved son and brother to the King, has now been stripped of nearly everything that once defined his royal life. The palace has spoken. His titles, his honors, and now even his home. The Grand Royal Lodge have been taken away. The message from King Charles couldn't be clearer. No more exceptions. No more special treatment. For decades, Royal Lodge was Andrew's refuge, his private kingdom inside Windsor Great Park. Now, the gates are closing, and standing quietly in the middle of it all is Sarah Ferguson, the former Duchess of York. She has lived under that same roof long after their divorce, through the scandals, the isolation, and the quiet years of retreat. But with the eviction notice served, she finds herself facing the same question as Andrew. What happens when the royal safety net disappears? A few months before the storm broke, Sarah sold her London townhouse. At the time, it looked like an ordinary property deal. But was she preparing for this moment all along? Or did she simply sense the wind changing too late? Since birth, Andrew has carried titles that linked him directly to centuries of royal history. Today, those links are gone. Buckingham Palace confirmed that King Charles has initiated the formal process to remove every remaining style and honor attached to his brother's name. One insider described it as the most decisive royal act in modern memory. With that came the bombshell. Andrew was told to vacate Royal Lodge, the home he secured through a 75-year lease more than 20 years ago. Back then, he paid only a token rent and funded lavish renovations himself. For years, it seemed like a clever arrangement. Now, it's the center of a constitutional earthquake. Royal Lodge isn't just any property. It's a symbol of privilege and a reminder of how long the monarchy protected its own. But those days are ending. King Charles has made it clear. Reputation now matters more than rank. Inside the palace, a private family summit was held. The King, Queen Camilla, and senior advisors gathered with Andrew to deliver the message face-to-face. The grace period is over. According to one courtier, the conversation was firm, but not cruel. It's time to move on. The monarchy must be above question. Andrew pleaded for more time, arguing that he invested millions of his own money in the property. But the answer didn't change. The decision was institutional, not emotional. And so, the walls began to close in. While Andrew tried to hold on, Sarah Ferguson quietly started to reposition herself. She knows better than anyone that royal fortunes can rise and fall overnight. After their divorce, she built a separate life: books, charity work, television appearances. But Royal Lodge remained her anchor. It offered privacy, a sense of belonging, and a hint of royal prestige that no ordinary home could replace. Now, that comfort is vanishing. Money plays a large part in the story. Andrew's income streams have been shrinking for years. Without taxpayer support and with limited private funds, the cost of maintaining Royal Lodge became overwhelming. Leaks from the Crown Estate suggest that repairs have been delayed for years, running into millions. Fergie's recent property sale suddenly makes sense. By freeing cash, she gave herself choices, something Andrew may no longer have. It could have been foresight or pure luck, but either way, it positions her for independence just as Andrew's world caves in. Behind the scenes, the mood among palace aides is tense. Every decision about Andrew carries political weight. Allow him too much grace, and critics will accuse the monarchy of hypocrisy. Treat him too harshly, and they risk splitting the family at a delicate time for the crown. Meanwhile, the public has made up its mind. The sympathy that once surrounded the Duke of York has faded into frustration. The idea of him living rent-free in a multi-million-pound estate while ordinary Britons struggle with rising costs feels impossible to defend. Even among his own relatives, patience is thin. Courtiers whisper that the king's stance is not driven by anger, but by necessity. He cannot modernize the monarchy while his brother's scandal still casts a shadow over it. And then there's Sarah. What does she do now? Those close to her describe a woman torn between loyalty and survival. She still calls Andrew her best friend, but even friendship has limits. Moving out would mean freedom, but also final separation from the royal world that shaped her life. Possible destinations are already being discussed. A smaller property on the Windsor estate, a private flat in London, or perhaps a retreat in the countryside, far from the cameras. Each choice sends a message. Staying near Windsor would signal attachment to the old order. Leaving completely would declare independence. For the first time in decades, Sarah Ferguson holds the pen to write her own next chapter. As the York household fractures, the next generation watches carefully. Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie have built lives of their own, jobs, young families, and a desire to avoid controversy. Insiders say they were blindsided by how fast things escalated, but they understand why the change had to come. They grew up in the shadow of privilege. Now, they're watching it disappear. And maybe, for them, that's not entirely a bad thing. Because this is about more than a home, it's about accountability. For the first time, the monarchy is showing that rank alone cannot protect anyone. Still, the emotional toll inside the family is undeniable. Andrew feels humiliated. Friends describe him as angry one day and defeated the next. He's exploring legal options, but deep down he knows the balance of power has shifted permanently. King Charles, by contrast, appears calm. To him, this is not revenge. It's renovation of both property and institution. His goal is to leave behind a monarchy leaner, cleaner, and future-proof. That goal, however, comes at a heavy price. Family unity. The media has feasted on every development. Tabloids run daily headlines about the fall of the Queen's favorite son. Talk shows debate whether Andrew will ever appear in public life again. Books like Untold and The Other Side of the Story dissect every financial deal and friendship in excruciating detail. Then came Virginia Giuffre's memoir rekindling public anger and reminding the world why Andrew's rehabilitation is impossible. Some commentators even speculate about possible legal exposure, though no new charges exist. For now, the court of public opinion is punishment enough. As cameras flash outside Windsor gates, Andrew remains behind the curtains, rarely seen, issuing no statement. Fergie, however, continues to appear in interviews, promoting her projects with her trademark optimism. Yet even in her smiles, you can see the strain. People close to her say she's aware that her time at Royal Lodge is running out. The staff have begun quiet preparations, packing, inventory, discussions with the Crown Estate about logistics. A chapter is ending, slowly and painfully. For viewers watching this unfold, it's tempting to see it as just another royal scandal. But it's more than that. It's a cultural moment, proof that the monarchy, centuries old, can still adapt when forced to. And within that adaptation lies tragedy. Andrew, once the confident naval officer, now lives as a man stripped of identity. Sarah, once the fiery duchess, stands on the edge of reinvention. The love, loyalty, and shared past that bound them are no longer enough to keep them under one roof. The daughters will move on. The king will solidify his reforms. Royal Lodge will eventually house someone new, perhaps a working royal, perhaps a trust property for the public. And history will record this as the final fall of the Duke of York. Still, part of the public wonders, will there be forgiveness? Could Andrew ever find redemption, or is exile his destiny? Royal insiders say that while reconciliation within the family is possible, public forgiveness is another story entirely. For Sarah, redemption looks different. She doesn't need a title to remain relevant. She has the talent, the name, and the resilience to rebuild on her own. Friends predict she'll focus on writing and philanthropy, areas where she's always found warmth that the palace rarely offered. If she succeeds, her comeback could be one of the most remarkable transformations in royal history. From scandal to self-made independence. The king's decision to separate his brother from titles, honors, and privileges may appear ruthless, but it also defines his reign. He is setting a precedent that will outlive them all. Future generations will remember this as the moment when the crown chose integrity over indulgence. And as for Royal Lodge, it will forever carry the echo of what once was: laughter, family gatherings, tabloid headlines, and finally silence. The estate that symbolized Andrew's defiance now stands as a monument to change. So, what happens next? Will Sarah Ferguson carve a new life completely outside the royal orbit? Will Andrew fade quietly into obscurity, or fight for a place in a world that's moved on without him? Whatever their choices, one truth remains. This is the end of an era. The Yorks, once the royal family's lively outsiders, are now its cautionary tale. A reminder that titles can vanish, fortunes can change, and even the grandest palaces can lose their occupants. If you followed this story from the beginning, you know how rare it is to see the crown move this decisively against its own. But history is being written right now, behind those palace walls. Tell me what you think. Should the king have gone this far? Or was it long overdue? Share your thoughts in the comments below. As the clock ticks on the Royal Lodge eviction, the world watches one of the most dramatic chapters in modern royal history unfold. The man once known as Prince Andrew now stands as just Andrew, stripped of title, stripped of honor, and now stripped of home. What happens next? For the Duke, who once walked beside the Queen herself, and for Sarah Ferguson, the woman who never truly left his side, what future remains after decades of loyalty, comfort, and scandal? When the notice to vacate was delivered, the atmosphere inside Royal Lodge changed overnight. Staff who had served the Yorks for decades were suddenly uncertain. Some began quietly searching for other positions within the royal estate. Others waited, loyal, but uneasy. The gardens, once manicured with royal precision, started to reflect the tension within less care, more chaos, like the house itself had lost its soul. Behind closed doors, discussions turned to logistics, but also to legacy. How do you move out of a home that has been your world for 20 years? The chandeliers, the portraits, the echoes of laughter from Beatrice and Eugenie's childhood, all of it now tainted by the weight of public disgrace. Sarah Ferguson, however, handled it with an almost stoic calm. Her friends describe her as resigned but determined. She knew this day could come. Her decision to sell her townhouse was not coincidence. It was foresight. She understood that being tied to Andrew's sinking ship would only drag her further down. And so, while Andrew retreated behind closed doors, she began quietly planning her next chapter. One built not on royal privilege, but on resilience. Yet the separation was not just emotional. It was political. King Charles's decision to distance the crown from Andrew was not born out of cruelty. It was born out of necessity. The monarchy, still recovering from years of scandal and criticism, could not afford the shadow of controversy. To protect the crown, the king had to sacrifice his own brother's standing. It was a move both decisive and devastating. Insiders say that Andrew pleaded for leniency, offering to downsize or share expenses, but the king's mind was made up. There would be no exceptions, no quiet deals, no more protection. What once was family business had now become royal policy. Meanwhile, Sarah Ferguson faced her own reckoning. She had been many things: author, duchess, mother, scandal survivor, but never free from the royal label. For years, she clung to the identity of being royal adjacent, the familiar face of the fallen duchess who never quite left the palace grounds. But with the eviction, that identity began to fade. Her next steps would define who she truly was without the Windsor connection. Some close to her say she has considered a complete reset. a home outside London, far from royal whispers. Perhaps even a memoir that tells her side of the story, unfiltered, unguarded. A friend was quoted saying, "She wants peace, but she also wants her truth known." Whether she chooses silence or story, this could become the defining moment of her rebirth. For Andrew, however, silence may be the only option left. In the years following his withdrawal from royal duties, his appearances have been rare, controlled, and tense. The former prince has become a man adrift, relying heavily on private support from his mother's inheritance and minimal allowances from family trusts. His legal troubles may have faded from headlines, but their shadow still lingers in every conversation, every glance. Those who know him describe a man who feels betrayed, not just by the public, but by the very institution he once represented. Losing it has left a void no title or home can fill, as Royal Lodge prepares for new occupants rumored to be Prince William and his family. The symbolism could not be clearer. The future of the monarchy literally moves in, while the past moves out. One chapter closes, another begins. It is generational transition played out in bricks and mortar. The York daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, are caught in the middle. Publicly, they remain composed and loyal, maintaining dignity through silence. Privately, sources say they are heartbroken, not just for their parents, but for the legacy they once believed in. Their childhood home, the place of birthdays, weddings, and Christmas mornings, is being taken apart piece by piece. Eugenie, known for her compassion and balance, is said to be urging her parents to move on gracefully. Beatrice, ever the protector, reportedly offered financial help, but Sarah refused. She wants to stand on her own this time. "No more dependence," she told a friend. "This time, I'll rebuild it myself." But can Sarah Ferguson truly reinvent herself? After decades tied to the Windsor name, history suggests she can. Time and again, she has risen from scandals that would have buried anyone else. From financial collapse to media storms, she has always found a way to adapt. And perhaps, this time, without titles or royal walls, she might finally find what she never had: freedom. Across the palace corridors, King Charles carries his own burden. Stripping his brother of everything was not an easy choice. But the king is playing the long game, protecting the stability of the crown for future generations. Behind the firmness lies regret. After all, this is still his younger brother, the one who once walked beside him during royal tours, shared laughter, and celebrated their mother's reign together. But duty has always outweighed emotion within these walls. As for Andrew, the coming months will be quiet, but not peaceful. Legal advisors are working on lease termination details, and private discussions about potential compensation are ongoing, but few expect a favorable outcome. For the first time in his life, Andrew may have to face reality without the safety net of royalty. And so, as the moving vans prepare to arrive at Royal Lodge, a strange silence surrounds Windsor. The gates that once opened for royal processions now stand closed for a brother in exile. The fall of the House of York is more than a royal scandal. It's a story about identity, pride, and consequence. It's about what happens when privilege meets accountability, when loyalty meets survival. For Sarah Ferguson, this may be the start of something new. For Andrew, it may be the end of everything he ever knew. And for the rest of us watching, it's a reminder that even within palaces, no one is truly untouchable. Let me know in the comments, do you think Sarah will finally break free from the royal shadow and rebuild her life on her own terms? Or will she stay loyal to Andrew until the very end? If you've been following this royal saga, make sure you're subscribed, because the next chapter in the story of the Yorks is only just beginning.